Hey everybody, glad you guys could join me. My name's Brian, otherwise known as Sploosh Magoo, and I play for Freedom Gaming. I just wanted to cover down with a quick video on my great success last weekend, Saturday and Sunday, where I was able to pull out a first place finish at both the SEP champs that I attended, going on a flawless run both days. So, kind of want to just talk about set champs, building for your local meta, deck choices, and some MVP cards that really came through for me over the weekend, um, some must haves, and just kind of go over what worked and what didn't work for me. Uh, so, as I mentioned, I play for Freedom Gaming, and I was having a difficult time choosing a deck, and I reached out to the team. I was like, "Hey, I need somebody to send me a deck list." And my teammate Sisu was kind enough to send me his Emerald Steel list. We made some quick adjustments based off of my local meta, or what I perceived to be the local meta. Um, and I was able to come out on top with a phenomenal run. And just wanted to get into that. What is set champs? Set champs are a phenomenal segue between casual play and competitive play where the stakes are a little bit higher. The rules, everybody's a little bit more serious about the rules, about their play, um, and you're competing to win as set champ Matt, as well as those awesome promos for top eight. Um, So, if you haven't had a chance to attend a set champ, highly recommend you do so. It is a really good time. Um, and if you're interested in kind of breaking into that competitive scene, this is definitely the time to do it. Reach out to your local game stores, see when they're running them. Um, it is well worth it. Most places are doing raffles and stuff like that. So, kind of getting back on track here. On Saturday, I went over to Cape Fear Games in Wilmington, North Carolina. And as I mentioned, I took Emerald Steel with me, otherwise known as Green Steel. Um, the list I took is up here on screen. Nothing too crazy that really pops out off the top here. We're running our Diablo shift line. We got the morph in there. We have our Ursulas, both the 2 cost and 3 cost, playing the discard package. However, I am still very much so running the Beast Tragic Hero, uh, one of Cricky, and a one of Lucifer. And for my local meta, what I perceive the local meta to be a little bit more aggro leaning, as well as I expected a bit of the mirror. So I decided to run 2 Tinkerbell Giant Fairy, as well as a one of Grab Your Swords, instead of the Along Came Zeus. Grab Your Swords in particular, I felt if you could get the combo off of shifting your Tinkerbell on a morph and then singing Grab Your Swords and being able to ping everything for 3 damage, felt extremely strong into Amber Steel as well as Emerald Steel. On top of that, I also thought, and I think everybody's kind of the same mind, that Pete, Space Pirate, is extremely strong in this color pairing. Shifts on 4, so the turn after you play your Pete Games referee, you're immediately able to shift him. Completely shuts down the mirror, completely shuts down Amber Steel. Uh, Again, 6 cost, shift for 4, 5/5 body, quest for 2. And while this character is exerted, opposing characters can't exert to sing songs. Absolutely huge in the mirror and Emerald Steel, as I mentioned, and your pirate characters gain resist 1. So even if he's tapped, Amber Steel's not going to be able to sing the Long Came Zeus. They're going to have to spend their entire turn singing it, and it's still not going to banish that Pete Space Pirate. Uh, So in addition to that, they're going to have to run something into him, clearing up the board a little bit more for you. It was the biggest MVP of Saturday for sure. I was able to also shift the Pete and immediately sing something like "We Don't Talk About Bruno." If you had the Prince John out, immediately draw a card off that while clearing their board up a bit. So if unfortunately for me, or I guess fortunately for me, I never had to play against the mirror. I think I was the only Emerald Steel in the building that day. Um, but more so than that, and a little bit more intricate to everything, is when should we mulligan hard for that Diablo shift line? Is it worth it? Right? It's not always going to be worth it. On the play, it's a little bit better, but sometimes it feels really bad. Hey, I have one of the Diablos, whether it's the one cost or the three costs, and you throw away your entire hand, don't get the shift target that you wanted, and now you're left with this kind of awkward hand. Um, I also, if you note on the deck list here, I'm not running coves, so I don't have that ability to shift the Diablo and throw it in the cove. I just didn't think it was good enough in this meta, and so I opted out. Uh, I was more heavily relying on the Ursula, Deceiver of All, to be the MVP, as well as the Pete Space Pirate. And if I happen to get the Diablo shift line, awesome. I want to say that on Saturday, I think in my opening hand, I only had the shift line one time. So it my eyes personally, it's not always best to kind of throw away a decent hand in an effort to try to get that shift line and force it to happen, right? It can kind of leave, as I mentioned, your hand a little clunky, and things might not flow as well as they could have with whatever you had previously. Uh, Ursula Deceiver and Ursula Deceiver of All, also huge MVPs in the mirror, as well as Steel Song. Steel Song was the most represented deck on Saturday for me. And as always, Peak Games referee shutting down any actions and protecting your board. So knowing when to play those, uh, definitely a huge part of the deck, especially against any sort of Ruby decks where they might be able to prep you, or stopping them from playing a visions at a key moment in the game and allowing them to search for the answer that they might need, right? So I think overall there wasn't anything too crazy about this deck list. I ended up not really having to rely on the grab your swords at any point in time. Tinkerbell did have a I did have a cool play with this. Shift Tinkerbell came in, uh, popped something, I forgot what, on their side of the board, and then immediately turning it sideways, banishing another character, and then pinging something else for two. That is always going to be huge. It's a 4/5, pretty big body, still quest for two. So we cannot deny that Tinkerbell is very useful in certain matchups. Speaking of matchups, I wanted to go right into the games that day. So on the top here, I have all my rounds for Saturday, and then on the bottom, my rounds and matchups that I played for Sunday. So, talking about Saturday, round one, I played against Blurple or Amethyst Sapphire. It was definitely, he was a newer player. I was still on the draw, so I was a little bit, wouldn't say too nervous into the matchup. I think Emerald Steel is still heavily favored into that matchup, especially if you get the ball rolling. Um, not too much problems there. And then I played a Ruby Steel deck where they were running the Mushu, the Shark, the Fan Your Flames, and fortunately for me, oh, and Wheel. Fortunately for me, they didn't really get to kind of pop off. So we were able to steadily either keep them from, you know, using their actions to clear my board with a Pete or a Space Pirate. And I don't think they were ever really able to get to deploy their Maui half sharks either. So, uh, again, kind of lucked out on that one. Round three, we played against Amber Steele, a gentleman by the name of Chad, who is a very excellent player. That one, I was able to snag a win on the draw. Muses came in very big, as well as the Pete Space Pirate. I think the third game, I won the first game on the draw. Second game, I lost. And then to wrap things up, I don't know that I shifted, but we hit the Ursula Deceiver on two, sniped one of the songs, and then played a Pete on turn three. And then we were immediately able to shift the Pete, and Chad unfortunately missed an ink. Or I think that was game two where he missed the ink. But game three, shift the Pete, and then I had another follow up Pete games referee, and kind of just ran away with it. Um, Went right into top four, another Amber Steel player, and I think that was the one time where I did get to do the thing. I was the number one seed, so always helps to be on the play. But I got to do the thing, shift the Diablo. Again, at no point in time was I really mulliganing hard for the Diablo shift line. Um, More so, just kind of tried to play around by protecting my board, make letting the Ursula's Deceiver Evolves get me that additional value. um, Mulliganing. What I did want to mulligan for was the Ursula Deceivers. So being able to interrupt their songs, sniping something that's valuable, especially if they're kind of on this sort of half bricked hand where four of their seven cards or four of their six cards are uninkables, and then let's say you're able to snag a strength, it can really, really interrupt their game plan. Now they have to potentially ink something that they didn't want to ink, like a aerial that they were hoping to play on turn three. So it worked out for me. Pete, games referee, and Space Pirate came in clutch again. And then my finals was against Melissa. She was on the Amber Emerald Chernadogs list. I believe she was playing the Big Lady. Um, and on the play, didn't have too much of a headache. On the draw, game two, it got pretty close. We were able to stabilize thanks to muses and just kind of chaining songs together. Um, and I think on game one, too, she got kind of stuck with two big Chernabogs in hands. Uh, and utilizing the lady, it kind of took away cards from the discard pile and made it a little bit awkward. And once the muses came down, I was able to just bounce things back to hand without putting them in the discard. So more benefit for me. Um, yep, that was day one, Saturday. Post win, if I had to make any changes to the deck, meta dependent, I guess, I went in there with kind of thinking that there was going to be a lot of aggro, and not to say that there wasn't, um, but if I had to make a cut, it would likely be the grab your swords. Tinkerbell, I didn't mind it. I don't know exactly what I would replace off the top. Maybe I'd go four Beast, four Pete Space Pirate, but Tinkerbell, didn't hate it. It was pretty good. And overall, the deck ran extremely well. The uninkable counts only at 13. Um, and if you're able to establish your Prince John kind of early and get a discard going, you can maintain a pretty decent grip, keeping your hand full. But the thing that Emerald Steel kind of struggles with at times is being able to challenge things on board because a lot of the early game characters have really low power. So, like Ursula, you're not really trying to swing your Ursi Reval into another character, you're trying to utilize it when you have that song, right? So you can double sing. Muses, not a lot of attack power. Uh, but if you're able to kind of grow your board and then play that cricky, now you just kind of overwhelm the opposing side, right? But Cricky's, in my eyes, kind of this resort. Hey, we gotta clear everything, otherwise we might lose in a turn or two. You're kind of on a clock. Normally, you're trying to just grow your board wider and wider, and eventually being able to discard their hand. They don't have answers for your board, and now you can start sniping characters on their side before, hey, it's safe to turn my Prince John sideways or my B sideways. Um, in the Trinodogs matchup, it always feels bad to uh, swing your Beast Tragic Hero into something because you will always want to draw that extra card, and once he takes damage, doesn't allow for it. However, shifting, I think one of the matches, like they getting head on board, really going wide. I shifted the B3 with Morph on top of Morph, and then I think the turn I shifted it, we sang Let the Storm Rage on, draw a card, uh, protecting the beast, and then later on, unfortunately, we had to put some damage on him, but we keep the board clear and maintain control, not letting them creep up on the lore count overall. So that was Saturday. Had a great run. Really enjoyed it. Walked away feeling pretty confident. Um, and so went back to the team. I was like, dude, great start to our set champ. Uh, what am I running tomorrow? So I then went and got a deck idea from my buddy Joey, who's on the team, goes by Automatic. He is a diehard Ruby Sapphire player, and he has been brewing up a pretty cool Ruby Sapphire items list. So I was like, all right, no problem. Let's do it. Um, I believe Zan was on like four big Sisu, the empowered sibling. I only have three. So I decided to change things up a little bit. I went three Sisu, uh, Daring Visitor. I went three Sisu empowered sibling, and I went three Be Prepareds, as well as four Brawl. We are playing the four of Coil, Sapphire Coil, extremely powerful. And for the workshop, which is our main draw engine, I was only running three of. Didn't feel that a fourth was necessary. I still wanted to keep the uninkable count kind of low at 13. With Fishbone Quill, with Sail and Tipo, there's plenty of options to double ink in case you needed to, so you could trigger your Sapphire Coil multiple times. Didn't have to do that too often, but it did come in clutch a few times. Um, Another reason I went with the Ruby Sapphire was I didn't expect to see the mirror, right? When I went down and played at the SSG 10K, I think I ran into six mirror matches. This was pre-Hiram ban, and tell you what, those long games really, really eat away at you. Um, uh, Not for me. So went back to Ruby Sapphire. I think once again, the only Ruby Sapphire in the room on that day out of 18 players, and that took place at Cape Fear Collectibles. So we got in there. Some other kind of different things that I decided to throw in was the fact that I had a kind of a lack of one drops. So we have our four popsicles, kind of a staple. Vitalisphere, not the greatest, pretty cool plays that you can pull off with it, but I wanted to be able to kind of mold my hand right at the start of the game in case I missed ramp, or I was looking for, depending, like, hey, I don't know what I'm playing against. Now I can kind of sift through some cards right at the start. And so I played two of Develop Your Brain. And as a two of, I didn't expect to see it that often, but surprisingly, I was able to play it turn one quite a few times, if not on turn two. And there was definitely more than once where I mulliganed my hand looking for that ramp, didn't find it, and then thanks to Develop Your Brain, I was able to pull it off the top right, the first two cards. So that was really cool. Um, a big one as well was the Visions of the Future. Without a doubt, especially going, I think, into the top cut, Visions allowed me to find the answers when I needed them. Um, I thought it was fantastic. Like, really, really solid. We'll get into that shortly here. Um, so, as we spoke about, develop your brain plus the Vitalosphere and the Popsicle. That brought me to 9 1 drops. So, kind of worked out for me. Really enjoyed it. A big tip that Joey gave me was to kind of hold one of those 1 drop items for turn five if you had the workshop in hand. So that way you could play the workshop, play your item, and then pay the additional one, especially if you had the popsicle. So you're able to draw 2 cards on turn five and start refilling your hand. Um, Scrooge, I was definitely able to play for free a handful of times once you start getting the items rolling. But most of the time, since he's I think my only 4 drop, the goal was to ramp on two and then immediately plop down Scrooge on four. If we got lucky, we were able to get a workshop in hand, and then on five, play the workshop, play a 1 drop item, and we're off to the races. And now we can start playing the Ruby Sapphire Solitaire. So had a lot of fun with the Scrooge. Something else to kind of take note, especially uh, you know, depending on the color pairing that you're up against, is when to ramp and when not to ramp. Traditionally, hey, I'm playing Ruby Sapphire, I need to ramp as much as possible. That's not always the case, right? While ramping is good, if you end up dumping your entire hand into your inkwell, now you have nothing to work with, and your top decks in Ruby Sapphire are typically better than other color pairings, but sometimes you're going to pull that dud, right? You're late game and you top deck the Tipo when you wish you had top deck the Be Prepared or another board clear or something like that. So knowing when to hold them and when to ink them, pretty important. In particular, for me, I kind of went into it with the mindset of, hey, I'm playing against a Emerald Steel deck. Let's establish the Sapphire coil early, and from there we can kind of just pick apart their board. So I guess kind of going into that, the Sunday at Cape Fear Games, this was the bottom portion, were my matches. Off the rip, I had to play against Emerald Amethyst, and thankfully I was able to get game one. Game two, I left some damage on, I don't know if it was Tamatoa or maybe Maui, and they were able to lay down a pretty good go-go Tamago and gained a bunch. I think they got up to 18, played down a goat the next turn. It was kind of curtains for me. I'm not running Pirate's Life in the items list. Game three, we popped off, like absolutely popped off. Getting to play a bunch of stuff for free with Tamato happy as a clam. Um, yeah, that the deck was firing on all cylinders on that third game. Round two, had to play Chad again, who I played on Saturday. Pretty close set. There was a mistake I made where I could have I inked for the turn, coil triggered on I think like a SME, and then I could have I had two uninkables in hand or something like that. One of them being a big sisu, and I could have used my fishbone quill to ink the other thing, so I could clear his entire board. Um, he kind of went. I think he presented lethal like 2 or 3 times in the second game or third game, and it got close, but we were able to stabilize and maintain. Uh, Kind of also talking about the deck list again. Zan was strictly running only the empowered siblings, the Sisu empowered sibling as his board wipe. I kind of found that like getting to 8 ink wasn't always feasible. That's and when I say that was, I mean like by the turn that typically what would be your turn 5 when you could play the B prep, your opponent was kind of already rounding the corner and 14, 15, 16 ink, depending on the color pairing that you were matched against. Like Amber Steel, if they're laying down the daisies super early on, it makes it very difficult to kind of match their pace. So you ramp on 2, maybe you're also able to get down a fishbone quill and continue to ramp. But if you're all you're doing is ramping, now you're not drawing cards, and without Hiram, it kind of puts you in this pretty awkward situation. So I kind of limited myself to ramping once, unless I was able to place them in a position where I knew that they were going to whole new world me. So if they were going to wheel me, and that was kind of their only out, then we would ramp kind of um, indiscriminately, just ramp it up. But that doesn't happen often, and I learned a very hard lesson when I played Candio at the SCG Tampa, where I was like, all right, he's definitely going to ramp me, or he's definitely going to wheel me, and I just went all in on ramp. And sure, he wasn't ripping, it was a little bit slower pace for him, but he very smartly opted to not wheel, even though he had it in hand. He's like, well, now you're top decking and I have a board, and I ended up just kind of getting choked out, uh death by a thousand cuts, if you will. So kind of important, you don't want to overdo it on the ramping, in particular against the Emerald Steel matchup. Don't think I opted to ramp at all in that matchup. The mulligan priority for me against Emerald Steel was getting that coil established on turn 2, and then if you happen to have a brawl or a Sisu Daring Visitor in hand, after that, ink, you know, banish their Ursula Deceiver of All, banish their Diablo, the inking with coil out. You can banish the shifted Robin Hood or the Beast, whatever that they put out for those first few turns. Awesome. It was fantastic. Anything that they shifted, especially now they were down a extra card, and the longer the game goes for Ruby Sapphire, typically the better, right? And with Emerald Steel in particular, normally against Ruby Sapphire, the list running the Sharks, the Maui Half Sharks, and a bunch of actions and songs and stuff, it's kind of brutal when the Peats come down, as well as the Ursula Deceiver, where they're kind of picking apart your hand. I only have 3 songs in hand to take apart, and not that many actions overall for the Peat to stop. Your primary board clear is going to be the big Sisu. So if you can coil Sisu, and then down the road, on turn 6, you're able to shift the big Sisu, you are typically going to be in a pretty great position. Um, your end game here, your goal with the end game is getting the happy as a clam out, keeping him alive for a turn, and sorry about that. Keeping him alive for a turn where he's able to quest and lay down a free lucky dime, and then following up with a Tamatoa, or if you already have a Sisu out, Now you're just gaining free lore with that lucky dime. Most people aren't running any item hate at the moment, so most of your items are able to stick around pretty convincingly. Didn't have any issues there with people trying to get rid of my items. Um, if I was on the play against the more aggro type list, I didn't mind ramping on 2, Scrooge on my turn 3, and then into like something like Maui, hero to all, and now you're just checking their board, keeping them from turning sideways. Um, there was 1 or 2 games where it's kind of like do or die, where hey, I got to ramp and get to play this prep, otherwise we're going to be in trouble. In particular, I think like there was a game against Chad, I think. I'm not sure. Oh no, in my top 8. So once we got to top 8, I had to play Amethyst Steel, and that was probably my toughest matchup, just strictly because of color pairing, how quickly they were gaining lore. They were on the Maleficent 1 drop quest for 2. So again, I went in as the number 1 seed, and I had the play, and I think that's really what got it for me. Game 1 did the thing, stabilized and won. Game 2, it wasn't even close. I got blown out. Like I don't think I even had a single lore on the board. Game 3, it kind of came down to top decking, really. Um, and I got to, I think I already had a workshop established and kind of desperate for some items. And I think we got like a Scrooge, grabbed the item, and then we kind of were able to start drawing some additional cards and keep clearing everything that he established on board. Especially, and Sapphire Coil is an absolute MVP against any sort of steel decks. Most of their threats are like going to have 3 power, so being able to shrink them down and then address the threat there, super efficient with the Sapphire Coil. So those Smees, the Lawrences, their Robin Hoods, their Pete's, all those 3 power things you're able to address pretty handedly, and was able to take the win there. My top 4, I had to play Chad again, who I played in round 2. Um, and it was game 1 wasn't too bad. Game 2, I made a massive miscalculation. Not even that I miscalculated, like I just didn't see it at all. Uh, I don't play Ruby Sapphire items all that often, but the Chad did point it out to me after that I missed it. But he had discarded on one of his wheels. I had to discard my dime, lucky dime, and I had Big Tomato out, and I could have quested, grabbed the lucky dime, and then played it and paid the 2 and won. And I almost threw that game because I grabbed a popsicle instead. He wheeled, I think he was at like 8 or 9 ink, and I think 8. He went to 8. He's, I think I had, yeah, I had 15 cards left in my deck, and he had 2 wheels left. And so he played Naveen, wheel, drew into another Naveen and another wheel, and he did it just for funsies, but left me with one card left in my deck. But I had Lorthul on board, so it worked out for me. But could have gone entirely different, right? So clutched it up just barely, and then finals was against the Emerald Steel player that I played in round 4. Um, that one, game 1 on the play, kind of went my way. Game 2, I kept a Sapphire Coil, and I think it was like a Human Sisu or a Brawl or something like that, and Maui for ink, and I sent everything back, and my hand ended up being Fishbone Quill, Sapphire Coil, 2 Human Sisu, um, the Maui, and two Brawl, if I remember correctly. And it was just like he shifted Diablo, took care of it. He played down. I don't know. It was. I think he played like two Diablos that both got taken care of, as well as two of the Ursulas. It was just like very slow, methodical gameplay for me, whereas just Ink addressed the threat, Ink addressed the threat, and then at like turn 6, he didn't have too many cards left. Not that I had that many cards left, but now uh, he never got to really pop off and take advantage in the early game. So once I got to that 7-8 ink, it was kind of all over because the top end quality for Ruby Sapphire is probably the best in the color pairings right now. Um, Overall, I had a absolutely phenomenal weekend. Um, if I had to make any changes with the Ruby Sapphire list, I would probably opt. I don't know that TPO is necessary. I really, really like the developer brain. Maybe I'd put in a third one of those. The visions at 3 was fine. I'd probably cut down on the prep to 2. Um, I think 21 items was perfect. The other thing I didn't really get to see or utilize was the Maui with the Maui's fishhook. Again, because there wasn't the mirror there, so didn't come in handy. But if there was the DKP list running around, that's where that would be really big for me. Most of the time, though, I just ended up inking the Maui's fishhook or just utilizing it to draw more cards off of the workshop. Um, but overall, the deck ran pretty daggone flawlessly for me. Not too many hiccups on uninkable counts. I had a great time with it, and I think it's really strong into this very steel dominated meta right now. So the Sisus, they're not able to snipe it with the Ursulas. It's not an action, so there isn't a whole lot they can do to mitigate the Sisu. You just have to be able to get to enough ink to play it, whether it's shifting on 6 or having to wait all the way to turn 8, right? But the deck comes with plenty of ways to kind of stall the board and keep them from gaining too much ink. Um, but yeah, overall, had a pretty fantastic time. It's always good when you win. Um, Tomorrow, hopefully, maybe I get to play, or the following week, we'll see. But promise I put a video out, and this week has been absolutely crazy. So here I am, Friday night, 11 p.m., talking to myself a little bit, but a promise is a promise. So hopefully, you guys are able to kind of gain some ideas from this and, get out there and win a set champ. Um, we are doing a bunch of giveaways on our YouTube channel, um, as well as I think in the next few weeks here might be giving away one of these set champ mats. So stay tuned, hit that subscribe button. Um, I'll catch anybody who's going to the SSG Set 8 pre-release. Come on down. It's your last chance to get an invite to their invitational that's taking place in August, I think they announced, with the Set 9 release, something like that. So keep a year out. Best of luck at your set champs. Thank you for tuning in if you've made it this far, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Much love. Peace.